Freedom is messy. In free societies, people will fall through the cracks, drink too much, eat too much, buy unaffordable homes, fail to make prudent provision for health care, and much else. But the price of being relieved of all of those tiresome choices by a benign paternal government is far too high. Big government is the small option. It's the guarantee of smaller freedom, smaller homes, smaller cars, smaller opportunities, and smaller lives. In today's video, I'm going to cover an article that was written on CNN that now proves President Donald Trump was exactly right in his statement on the left. This isn't about democracy. This is about control. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are probably wondering, CNN actually admitted this? Well, yes, they did. Jen Psaki accidentally gave us an enormous, critical insight into their belief system and into their thinking. And also, inadvertently, confirmed something that the Florida Maquis reported over a month ago. This is a quote from Jen Psaki. "We're recovering from the Game of Thrones period of our history." Jen Psaki talks about the transition and her role. This is updated 11:14 a.m. Eastern Time, Thursday, May 6, 2021, an article written by Brian Stelter. Now, I know both of these individuals are distasteful, but if you listen to what is revealed, they give up the entire game, and this can be used against them. In a pair of interviews, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki is sharing a lot about her approach to the job, the frantic news cycle, media fragmentation, and the role of Twitter. Now, in her first comment here, she defends the idea of counseling President Biden to not answer questions on the spot. You see, that's what she says. That is not something we recommend. In fact, a lot of times we say, don't take questions. That's the first sign you know you're dealing with a tyrant, someone who can't explain what or why they're doing it. Now, here is the real key. On the transition from the Trump White House to the Biden White House, here's her quote. "We're kind of still in recovery from the Game of Thrones period of our history that, you know, some of what I think the job is in this moment, and this won't always be, and certainly hasn't been historically, is kind of reaffirming and restating like what the role of government is, right? And what the role of agencies are, and what the role of policy processes are, and how a bill becomes law." Now, what is she talking about? Recovering from Game of Thrones. You would have to have known what the series was all about to understand what this really means. In the series, for those of you who are unaware of the plot line, there's a lot of different things going on, but the primary focus, the primary drive is this character, this Daenerys Targaryen, this Queen of Dragons, Mother of Dragons, believes that she is entitled to rule the 7 kingdoms, and if anybody gets in her way, her pet dragons will burn them to ashes, because she has the best interest of the people at heart. She wants to free everyone. One of her quotes is, "I'm not going to stop the wheel, I'm going to break the wheel." Now, what is that wheel? This is directly related to what Jen Psaki's talking about. See, she sees the wheel of history, all of these different families that have ruled the 7 kingdoms, as an inconvenience and a problem. That there has been this division of power, and there have been these imperfect men that have come to rule, and they have caused problems and grief and heartache. One of the best parts of this series is Season 4, Episode 3. There's a character named Tywin Lannister. He's the patriarch of a very wealthy family, and upon the death of one of his grandsons, who was not a very good king, he is counseling the young man's brother and says, "Do you know what makes a good wise king, Tommen? A wise king knows what he knows and what he doesn't." counseling his grandson to listen to his counselors and understand that he will be flawed as a king. Other kings were flawed as kings. Other leaders were. This is why we have division of government. This is why we have term limits. This is why we have state governments. This is all directly related to what is distasteful to Jen Psaki and Brian Stetler. See, the mother of those two young men had also these same designs. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground. For her, what ruling was lying on a bed of weeds, ripping them out one by the root before they strangle you in your sleep. You see, this is a microcosm of America and the free world. We are going to have leaders that are failed and flawed men and women. It's just the nature of things. We don't vest pharaonic power in our leaders. But you see, that's a problem for Jen Psaki. It's a problem for the current crop of Democrats because it's messy. And it could hurt people's feelings if things aren't so perfect all the time. Or if one state decides it wants to go one way and another state decides it wants to go another. You see, they can't have that. This is why she said, we're trying to recover from the Game of Thrones era of our history, where there was freedom, messy freedom, ugly freedom, where people could believe whatever they wanted to believe, regardless of whether it was truth or not. You have the right to believe what you want to believe. Now, if you think I'm kidding on this, in this article from earlier today talking about our governor citing our Florida election bill, tightening drop box mail-in ballot rules and all this other stuff, they reveal this in the article. You see, there are people who believe that online rules the world, that real life is directed by what goes on the internet. And here's where they give up the game. Democrats, meanwhile, have slammed the Florida bill and similar efforts in other states as voter suppression. Others have said the legislatures are moving ahead with the new bills targeted at election security are doing so based on the falsehood that the 2020 presidential election saw widespread fraud. DeSantis, for his part, has touted the security of the 2020 election. You see, here's the reality that they don't like. There are 47 states that have put forth bills much like this. 47 states. Now, how can this be that their approved truth disagrees with what's going on in reality? You might ask the question, well, Florida Maquis, if we're coming out of the Game of Thrones era, where does she see us going? Real simple. What I've said before, you see, they're looking to the United Federation of Planets chapter of our history, which was just polished up tyranny and communism. If you really go back and look at what went on in that series, what they're talking about is a tyrannical federation that imposes its will and values on everyone, and anyone who disagrees with it, they destroy. They were more the Borg than the Borg were. Now, you ready to have your mind blown? All this stuff about approved truth and unapproved truth, things that are allowed to be said and things that aren't allowed to be said. On the left here, I have avalon.law.yale.edu. It is the actual transcript of the NSDAP. What was the NSDAP? The party program of the NSDAP was proclaimed on 24 February 1920 by Adolf Hitler at the first large party gathering in Munich, and has remained unaltered as the National Socialist philosophy. If we scroll down to point 23, it reads, "We demand legal opposition to known lies and their promulgation through the press." You see, this is what they want. This is what they want. It's not good enough that they censor. Now they're going to go to the next step, that if you repeat an unauthorized truth, they can prosecute you. You see, now does this image make sense? Either submit to the Queen of Dragons or be burned by her dragons. There will be authorized truth and unauthorized truth. There will be things you can say and things you can't. Because if you say the unauthorized thing, that might influence somebody in a way that they don't like or they don't approve of. Someone might believe it, and it's not an authorized truth. Therefore, the Ministry of Truth is going to have something to say about this. This is what Jen Psaki really meant when she said we're coming out of the Game of Thrones era of our history. See, that was the real truth of the show, is that in season 1, for all of the problems that they had, for all of the issues, the 7 kingdoms were free. There were a lot of different flags. There were the Lannisters, there were the Starks, there were the Karstarks, there were the Targaryens, there was the Land of the South that had the kind of Florida feel to it. The name ran out of my head. There was a group of that were in charge of the sea. And they all had their own flags and their own little ways of doing things in their own kingdoms. And it was messy and ugly, and sometimes they had conflicts. But it was freedom. And freedom is messy, and it's ugly, and it's been the hallmark of our history. And this is what they can't have. And they just revealed it. She literally said it, that she sees the future, the Biden administration, is coming out of freedom, coming out of liberty and leaving that messy liberty behind, and going into a future of tyranny. Clean, nice, pretty, predictable, communistic, socialistic tyranny. I'll say it again. Freedom is messy. In free societies, people will fall through the cracks, drink too much, eat too much, buy unaffordable homes, fail to make prudent provision for health care, believe things they shouldn't, believe things that might be true, might not be true. But the price of allowing government to relieve you of all of those tiresome choices is far too high. Big government is the option of fear. It is the guarantee of less liberty, smaller wealth, smaller opportunity, and less growth, to the point of zero growth. And that is the end of all of this. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.